Welcome to Living the Reclaim Life podcast. I'm Denisha. We're glad you're here for conversations that revive hope, inspire healing, and encourage you to live a vibrant life with Christ. So grab a cup of coffee as we chat with today's guest. Well, it is week 2 of September with Sally. Each of these episodes stand alone. If you missed last week's episode, we talked about dropping the weight. And ladies, no, it's not a magical formula to weight loss. But Sally talked to us about how to drop the unwanted baggage that we carry around and steps to healing. So if you missed that episode, be sure to go back and listen. It was a good one. And I'm telling you, this month during September with Sally, ladies, we are getting mentored by one of the most amazing ladies. So today, Sally is back with us, and we will be discussing something that we all need. So Sally, let's start by answering that question. What do we all need?
Hi to everyone, and hi to Denisha. What do we all need? Well, guess with me. We all need at least one of these. These are treasures from God. We have different kinds of these, and they stick closer than a brother. And Jesus had 12 of them during his 3 years of ministry. And when hardship and trauma come into our life, we really need these. What are they? Friends. Mentors, girlfriends. I have been so blessed in my 75 years of life with friends throughout my parenting years. Just all the stages of life, I have had younger friends to mentor and older friends to say, here, this is the way to go. I can remember an older friend from Pennsylvania where we used to live before we moved to Tucson. I can remember struggling with my oldest son. He was quite strong-willed. Don't tell him that, or if he's watching, but he was. And I can remember I wanted to pull my hair out. And she would give me advice. I would take my daughter over to her place for piano lessons, and she would give me advice on how to hang in there. And it really was pretty serious because one summer we had a child come from the inner city, Philadelphia, to spend a week with us. And when the week was over, I was going to keep that child and send my son back to Philadelphia. But I didn't. I hung in there, and he is now a precious man of God. But girls, mentors, older women are valuable in your life. You come to a rough spot in your marriage and, okay, I guess we'll just do what everybody else do, throw in the towel. And an older woman says to you, it's worth working through. You're just going to take yourself into another relationship. What are the issues? What are the roots? And they have such value in your life. How to navigate school, dating, marriage, parenting, and aging. Oh my goodness. I've had an older friend, 98 years old. I think she just passed away a couple weeks ago. And she taught me so much. I was in ministry. She was over me in that women's ministry. But she taught me about life. And the thing her and her husband taught me the most was how to age gracefully. They adjusted their schedules as they grew older, as their health problems increased. When he got so he had to go to bed really early, she would go to bed with him. They'd cuddle, they'd spend time talking and reviewing their day. Then she would get up and have the rest of her evening. Just that taught me there's going to be adjustments as we grow older, and we have to be willing to do them. And they did them so graciously. And a few passages, important passages in the Bible that speak about this very clearly is Titus 2:3. Teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to too much wine, but to teach what is good. Then they can train the younger women to love their husbands, their children, to be self-controlled and pure, to be busy at home, to be kind and subject to their husbands. Now, let's break that down, Denisha. And how do we do this? I mean, how do we teach these younger women, and what is it we're teaching them? Well, we're teaching them to be self-controlled, whether
Mhm.
it's spending or it mentioned alcohol. I'm not against all alcohol. I've chosen, we never had it in our home because my husband came from an alcoholic family. But today, wine is very accepted among the younger people, and that's fine. But it says, watch your mouths, be moderate in your drinking, be careful of those women around you that are watching you. I have a very good friend who is a recovered alcoholic. So it teaches us to be self controlled, do things in moderation. And we don't know. If you remember James Dobson, he used to say, don't open any doors because we don't know if that's the one we're going to be weak in. And
Mhm.
as I picture a corridor with all these doors on it, we don't know if we dare to open a door, if that's the one that Satan would just love to bring us, down with. And I'm talking there too about spending, being on our screens too much. As an older woman, and I've observed children in a store say, Mommy, 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 and mommy's on her phone and practically on out in the middle of traffic. And it's like, ladies, put your phones down, you know, talk with your children when you go out to dinner, put your phones down, talk with your family. It's like we've become such an isolated society. And my children used to tease me that I would want all of us to have dinner as regularly as we could together. But there's something to that, having the family come together and have a time of the day that they can say, my day was horrible. And dad can kind of say some things and we all have input. But that family time, it's a thing of the past, but girls, we have to preserve it. And these are some things that older women can teach us. And I want to give a plug for hospitality. I think I have the gift of hospitality. My
Mhm.
door is usually always open. But you know what? Any of us can serve a glass of water or a cup of coffee and some cookies on a plate. That to me is hospitality, having your doors open. I'll have friends call me. I'm in the area. Can I stop by? Sure. Now, my house is usually presentable, but it's just preserving these. Jesus talked a lot about, and Paul too, about hospitality and letting the missionaries have a place to stay and the importance of it. And we go out to eat all the time anymore. And I know I do a lot more than I ever did, but hospitality doesn't have to be hard. Go get a pan of lasagna at Costco and some bread and a bag of salad, and you can be hospitable to somebody that needs to get out and be
Sally,
among other friends.
that is a good word for me because I am one of those who thinks, first of all, I don't have the gift of hospitality, but you're right. I can grab a pan of lasagna, some cookies, some coffee, and I can do that. And, it's funny, my husband has the gift of hospitality.
Oh,
He'll have you
interesting.
over. He loves a party.
Well, I'll know who to call when I want to come over.
Exactly. Call him. He will say yes. Yeah. And I always think, I have to have, we have 3 kids still at home. And so I think I have to have the house clean. I have to do all this. But I love what you're saying because that's authentic relationship. I'm going to pop by. And I remember when growing up, my mom would never answer the door unless she was expecting you. And I have to say, I'm kind of the same way. It's a joke. Some of our friends like, well, you better text Denisha and tell her you're on her way, or she'll stand looking at you through the peephole and won't open the door. Isn't that terrible? But I love you're making hospitality and just opening a door for a heartfelt conversation so simple. I really appreciate that.
Well, I have an older friend, and I'm not sure if she's my mentor or I'm hers. We're mutual. But she would always say, after she came over, she would always say, I needed that, whether
Mm.
it was a meal or just a gathering. Forgive me, younger women, if I'm stepping on any toes. Hospitality seems like a big deal to them. Raising children, I get it. I get it. And it does come easy for me, but you can still open that door. I don't care if there's some laundry around and your bed's not made, but you can still open that door, put on a pot of coffee, and serve some hand store-bought cookies. They don't even have to be handmade.
Yes.
But I did not have that growing up. If I asked my mother to have a friend over, she would just, I don't know, da, 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 da. And I thought, no, my kids are going to be able to bring friends home. And I remember such a funny story when we were in ministry here in town to the Native American Indian children. My husband called me from the office and said some people that we don't even know from Pennsylvania are here, and I invited them to dinner. Well, in those days, money was very, very tight. We got a very small paycheck and usually had a lot of kids. I had between 4 and 6 children all the time.
Wow.
And I'm like, Jim, I have 1 can of Spam. Oh, well, bring them up. You know what? When we got done, like Jesus and the loaves and the fishes, I had Spam left over. This just doesn't happen.
No way. That's amazing.
It was part of showing hospitality. It also says in that scripture that Titus wrote that we are to love our husbands and our children and be self-controlled and pure. Do you love your husband? Do you need older women to say, I had to tell one friend one time, he's your husband, he's not your son. Or we don't have that right to tell them what to do all the time. We need to respect them. And one of the best books on this is the book, The Love and Respect, that men just want to be honored and respected, and women just want to be loved. And you know what? If we do that, it goes pretty far in a marriage relationship. So we are to respect our husbands. And then your home is to be a safe and special place. Allow time with your family. Let your kids bring friends home. Our place in Pennsylvania, when my older kids were growing up, was always where the baseball field was. And my husband used to freak out that where the bases were, there wasn't any grass. And I would always say it's better to have them here. And, my daughter's home's the same way. That's where the kids come and spend the night, plus other homes. But make your home a safe place for all people. And, learn from the older woman who says, let your husband lead the home. Let your husband lead the family. Let your husband lead the quiet time. Maybe he doesn't want to, well, then take over. But share with you those hard things that what you need to do as a wife in Titus 2.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Having solid friends that can speak that kind of truth in love to us is so beautiful. My mom passed away when I was 23. So it's been quite a while. And I've been so blessed with God just placing women in my life who can speak that truth to me. And so many spiritual mamas that God has given me to just be able to call me out, to call me up higher, to not let me compromise, I think, in a lot of different ways, whether it be marriage or parenting. I think those friends are so important because they can really give us things that sometimes even maybe family members can't. What do you think about that?
Exactly. I agree. Friends fill a very specific role. And sometimes we're too close to family members. 4 years ago this month, I lost my sweetie husband of 53 years. And, my family couldn't minister to me because they were grieving. I realized that later than I should have. But my friends came through. And when I would cry out and have a need or want to just go crawl up in bed that day, I'd say, Lord, send somebody, and a friend would call, take me to lunch, whatever. And I can remember sitting in a restaurant in town, and my one friend said to me, Sally, what are you not getting that you need? Isn't that a good question?
That's a very good question.
It's a good, and your kids have their lives. And like I said, in this instance, they were all grieving their dad. And they couldn't minister to me in a way that friends could. Being a good friend has nothing to do with age. If you're 18, you can be a solid mentor to someone. And she might be 22, but it's the maturity, it's the spiritual maturity that we've grown to have and our walk with Jesus that people watch. And that's what makes us mentor and friends. I recently was giving the, shall we say, opportunity. I feel like God gives us different people to mentor, and it's not everybody. We can't be there for everybody. Learn that. We cannot be. But when God says, this one's yours, and I was introduced to this 84-year-old woman at church that had in January lost 3 family members in 2 days, her husband, her son, and her daughter-in-law.
Oh.
And I introduced myself to her, and a woman at church introduced us, actually, got to know her and said, okay, Lord, how can I help her? Well, I had recently gone through grief myself, so I could give her my book. But then I just, with other friends, we would go up and visit her. She lives way up in Northwest Tucson. And I could visit her. We took her to lunch. It just was amazing, the things that I was able to do and how we could connect because of going through something similar. And so we are to be good friends, and you need good friends to teach you how to do that.
How do you know, Sally, if it's a safe friend? Sometimes in life, we can have people come our path that maybe we shouldn't be trusting with everything. What are some things that make a safe friend?
Well, a safe friend needs to hold confidences. If you tell them a problem in your life, a safe friend does not throw it up to you. They listen. They have to be a good listener, and they don't have to always get it. But I just find that listening means more to me than anything when you listen. I would have days when I wasn't making sense right after Jim died, but I knew who would really listen and see through it and say, okay, what do you need today? I need to go to Hobby Lobby. That was my happy place. And truly, that was my happy place. And, whether they came and took me or whatever, but safe friends, you just know you can trust them, but you also need to trust them when they say the hard things to you. And, we don't all have that gift of exhortation, although I think I do. I don't particularly care for it, but you have to be willing to hear and give those hard things that I think you're wrong in this, Sally. I love you, but I don't think you're looking at it in the full realm of what you should be. And boy, I heard a lot of that after Jim died because I wasn't thinking straight. I wasn't acting normal. I was messed up, as we all are in deep grief. We need to keep that in mind, and we will know our safe friends. And like I said, I have a lot of older and I have a lot of younger. So then we have to really watch how we act and how we live, because they're watching us. Our grandkids are watching us, our younger friends. I have one friend in particular that doesn't live in the area, and we've always called ourselves Jonathan and David. Aww. Because we can tell each other anything, and there never is any condemnation. And she always asks, a good friend asks good questions. Well, Sally, how are you? Da, 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 da. Or how was last week with celebrating, the 4th year of Jim's death? And a good friend listens, but they ask good questions.
I love that good question part, because I think sometimes we think to be a good friend, we need to fix it. And that's like the opposite of what people need. They don't need us telling them what they should do. They need us to ask good questions so that we can pull and have a vested interest in what our decisions are going to be versus someone telling us to do something. That is such a great point.
Yes. 6 years ago, we left a church that we had been a part of for over 25 years. And it's hard. It's hard to, just start over again, so to speak. But we were sitting behind this couple and I instantly connected with them. And then one day I got the nerve to ask them if they were in a small group. And if that group was open. And we ended up being in a small group with them and some other couples. But that couple was so there. I mean, so many people were after Jim died. And after 2 years, when I decided to sell my home and move into an apartment, they were there to putty the holes. They were there, him and I both like in and out. So 3 of us, her and him and I, will take our trips to in and out. They were there. And it doesn't matter what you do. Ask God, how can I help this friend? He might say, go let them talk to you. It's practical things. This couple I was speaking of, they picked me up the first few times at night meetings. I didn't mind driving at night. I had to get used to it after Jim passed away, but very practical things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One thing I've heard from a lot of women that they don't know where their place is anymore. Mm-hmm. That when it comes to church, it feels like, okay, well, I'm not in the nursery anymore. I don't have kids there anymore. And where is my place? I am so passionate about mentoring and finding women to do life with. And I love what you said about, women that are older than you and women that are younger than you. I have this picture of, standing there with one arm raised up to reach someone who's been there and done that in life, and one arm down to bring up the generation below us. Yeah. And I think that's so important. What are your thoughts on just mentoring, and what does that look like? And for the ladies listening who are wondering, can God really use me still? What are your thoughts on that, Sally?
God can.
Yes.
Do not believe the lie. Sometimes we feel like we are no longer valued. I love that the church I attend has every age, from the sweet 80-year-old white hair women to the young guy with all the tattoos up and down his arm. And I mean, I just love it, because thinking to myself, my husband and I, in our 53 years of marriage, have dealt with just about every situation you could deal with, from financial devastation, from being hurt in ministry, from being hurt by a church, from, blah, 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 on and on. Well, we need the experience of the older people to tell us, okay, I've been there, but I didn't stay mad at the church forever. I licked my wounds, stayed out of ministry a couple years, and then God booted me back in. Things like that, where it might not be that for you. You might, still be licking your wounds from a hurt situation years ago. And so you clump church all into that and say, well, I'm going to be mad. No, an older woman would say, no. And, this is so funny. The older woman I mentioned, 96-year-old, when I worked under her in women's ministry, I was head of the Wednesday morning women's ministry, and I never cut school or anything. I was a good girl. But this one day, something ornery got into me, and I decided to leave the church grounds and go have a cup of coffee with a friend. And I got found out, and I got called into this woman's office, and my head was down like, did you leave the property? Yes. Well, do you know that if something happened and we couldn't find you, that you're responsible for it? Yes. And, I just got called out, and I needed to be. But I mean, they're the things that older women do. They keep you accountable. And now I'm one. And, sometimes it even goes into our grandkids. And, my grandson told me a couple of weeks ago, we were up at a cabin in the White Mountains, and he said, well, I guess it was his wife said to me, I want to sit down with you, Grandma, and write your story. Because as older people, we are to be telling our story of how God came through for us.
Yes. Amen. There's so much wisdom. And, Google can't give us that. They can tell us, here's what to expect about this diaper bag, or here's what to expect on a product. But Google cannot give us the wisdom that Sally can give us, or other women in our lives can give us.
Exactly.
And I heard a friend say recently, if you're 2 weeks ahead in your healing, or 2 weeks ahead of someone else, you can reach back and love on them as well.
Exactly.
That you can help them through. We don't have to be experts, or else nobody would be talking, if you ask me.
Exactly. No, that's so true. And I believe that as well as everything we experience, having been through so much depression during my life and anxiety, God uses that for me to minister to other people. I know what you've been through. I know what it feels to lose a husband. These are all things that God has put us through, led us through, allowed us to experience, has been there for us. But we can say, I know what you're feeling. I mean, there's nothing worse than somebody say, I know what you're going through, when they haven't. You might be asking, okay, where do I find them, these mentors? And I would just say, I mean, church is an obvious answer, small groups. I'm now leading a women's small group in my home, and I live in an apartment, and about 8 or 9 women fill it up, but we've been filling it. And so I would say in a church, a ministry like Reclaim Story, you can connect with other women with your same maybe story, background. Or my daughter's a part of a prayer group for a Christian school where the mothers get together weekly and pray. So if you pray, God will show you where He wants you to learn from an older woman. There's programs out there. Just pray, really just pray, and God will lead you to those people that are so valuable to you.
Amen. And this is the first time I'm saying this publicly, but as you know, Sally, we have been working behind the scenes. There's so much paperwork and insurance and all the stuff, but we are working to create a mentor program so that women don't have to do life alone. And so we really believe that part of belonging to a community is contributing and giving back into other women's lives. So whether they're a mentor, whether they're mentoring someone, we really believe in that community and connection piece of belonging. So we are excited. We should be rolling that out.
Wonderful.
Hopefully, I'm hoping by the first of the year, that if not before, I'm going to under promise and over deliver there, hopefully. But by the first of the year, we'll be doing that. We're launching some small groups. And like you said, just finding, God, where do you want me?
Yep.
Finding a place to be, to serve, and then just keeping our eyes open to allow those trusted friendships to begin. I love the wisdom that you poured into us today, Sally. I really appreciate it. There is so much wisdom. And boy, I'll tell you, if you're listening to this, yes, God can use you. If you are breathing, you're not done.
Well, I love the 12 disciples that Jesus handpicked. All were so different. And some, even Jesus raised his eyes at. But he handpicked each of them because they had value. Even the one that betrayed him, they had a value. He saw that in them, and they were going to be part of his plan. So God, we're all up for grabs, girls. And you look around you, there's younger women that need you and older women that you can learn valuable lessons of life.
Amen. Sally, thank you for the wisdom that you've given us today and for sharing. I appreciate your honesty.
You're very welcome.
And we'll be ready for next week with September with Sally. We really need a jingle for that, I think.
Well, I'm not going to sing one.
Thanks for listening. I pray you found hope in today's conversation and maybe even feel a little less alone in your story. Stay connected with us on Facebook and Instagram at Reclaimed Story. Want to learn more about living a reclaimed life and how you can be a part of our growing community of reclaimers? Check out our website at reclaimedstory.com. All of those links and more will be in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this inspirational podcast, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. That is a huge help in helping us reach more people to live the reclaimed life. Thank you so much for listening.